Good morning.
Good morning.
Seated. In John's Gospel, there is rarely black and white. There is rarely an easy, plain meaning. There is regularly ambiguity and nuance. There is regularly subtlety and illusions. And we have subtlety and illusions and nuance and ambiguity and beautiful symmetry and irony, all in these 8 verses we have today. On this 4th Sunday of Easter, we always have Good Shepherd Sunday. It always happens on the 4th Sunday. And we hear in all 3 lectionary years some portion of chapter 10 in John. Today, we are at the end of chapter 10. Today, Jesus is in the portico of the temple during the Feast of the Dedication, where temple leaders approach and engage with him verbally in a hostile fashion. There is beauty and nuance and subtlety and illusions and irony in this encounter, and here's how. The Feast of the Dedication is Hanukkah to us, which is from the book of Maccabees. And in Maccabees, we have God reclaiming Jerusalem through the heroic acts of faith of certain people. It is a joyous festival encompassing feasting, celebrated through lights, candles. Yet the temple leaders are not celebratory or joyous in their conversations with Jesus. They are acting the opposite of what Hanukkah represents. Notice the subtlety here. We have Jesus in the Temple of Solomon's portico. Jesus, portrayed in this gospel as the light of the world. The light of the world. And he goes unrecognized. During a celebration that uses light to memorialize God's presence. There is beauty in the construction and presentation of this situation. That was the beginning of the gospel. Let's jump to the last sentence. Jesus says, "The Father and I are one." The Father and I are one. Often this statement is interpreted as a metaphysical statement. But in this instance, it should not be. It is not what John is driving at. When it's said later, when John is deeply immersed in the Trinity, it is metaphysical. But that's another sermon. The Father and I are one. One is gender neutral in Greek. That indicates that they are not one person. But they are one. They are united in the purpose of the work. The work being done in Jesus' life and ministry. Jesus' work is God's work, is what Jesus is saying. To hear the story of Jesus is to understand the character of God. Those who hear, accept, live into this story know that Jesus is the Messiah, not through certainty, not through proof, but through those actions that imitate that pattern of Jesus' actions, which are God's actions. Here we can never be snatched away because we are in Jesus' hands. There is so much beauty and illusion in these 8 verses. There is an image of salvation here being held in Jesus' hands. Those temple leaders who came today to accuse and attack Jesus were looking for a concrete black and white answer to the question, are you the Messiah? And he answers, I've shown you in my works. I've shown you in my works. The works show who Jesus is. Jesus really hasn't told them. So far in John's Gospel, Jesus has told the Samaritan woman at the well and the man born blind, chapters 4 and 9, prior to this one today. These are private tellings. They are not publicly trumpeted. I'm here. That's later. Known through works. What Jesus is doing, what his followers are doing, is showing a functional unity between God and Jesus, and it is in the works done. What are those works? Based in love. Feeding, tending, feeding. That was last week's gospel. Feed, tend, feed. Feeding, tending, feeding. The hungry, the naked, the widowed, the orphan, the imprisoned, the poor, the lonely, the destitute, the broken, the sick, the dying, the needy, those suffering from addiction. And it is through justice, love, and care, and compassion, the caring, the giving of one's self to those less fortunate. The definition of the works. For those of you who remember some of my habitual traits in sermon giving, you're not going to be surprised when I say there's a translation issue here. We've been focusing on works right now, but we also need to focus on shown. What's translated is shown for us. I've shown you in my works. Shown can also be translated as pattern. And pattern in Greek means an ongoing standard of behavior. It's not a one-off thing. It's an ongoing work. It's a continuous, ongoing pattern of behavior. The messianic image of the shepherd, tied with Jesus' words saying, those who do this work are sheltered in his hands and cannot be snatched away, are very important images to give us courage to continue patterning our work on Jesus' work of helping those less fortunate than ourselves. And to me, that is the primary message of what Good Shepherd Sunday should be all about and be focused on. Jesus makes it clear today to those antagonistic temple leaders that he has shown them through his works, his continuous ongoing pattern of behavior, and not through his words. He's done that in his works and showing them that he is doing God's work, God's will, showing God's character and cares by these works. I'm reading this to say Jesus is saying words are not necessary, which is a really peculiar thing for a preacher to say. And yet faith is necessary. And let's be clear about what faith is defined as. It is willing to live in the story. To live in the story. Creating from that living, creating a new pattern in our behaviors based on that story. Faith that the sheltering, loving hands of Jesus will protect us, hold us up as we endeavor to do the work based in a self-giving love of that justice-focused work which Jesus patterned for us. Our collect asks for us to follow where Jesus leads. Can you see why we have that collect with this gospel? There are multiple, almost uncountable opportunities for us to do this work. And I believe we are challenged by this gospel today to continue, to persist in the face of challenges. And there are challenges. And do the work. Amen.